If you had met me then, you would have just seen another tired woman in a cheap building, counting coins in her hand and pretending everything was fine. I didn't know that the worst thing in my life wasn't my empty fridge or my landlord's threats, but the kind of people who moved in the dark just 3 streets away from me. The corridor light was dead again when I climbed the stairs that night, the kind of darkness that smells like rust, fried onions and old secrets. My feet hurt from the double shift at the cafe, my uniform still sticky with coffee and sweat, and all I wanted was to lock my door, eat dry bread with tea and forget the world. The building groaned the way it always did, a baby crying somewhere above, a TV shouting the late-night news, a couple fighting in fast, low whispers through the wall. The first buzz of the doorbell was so soft I almost thought I imagined it. Just a broken, tired little sound. I froze, key halfway to the lock. Nobody rang my bell at midnight, not friends, I didn't really have any left, not family, my mother had stopped calling the day I told her I wouldn't come back home. Midnight at my door usually meant one of 2 things, the landlord or trouble. The bell buzzed again, longer this time, then stopped like whoever was pressing it ran out of strength. My heart pushed against my ribs. My landlord always hammered on the door and shouted my name. This was different. I stayed still, my breath caught in my throat, listening to the building breathing around me. After a few seconds I moved to the peephole, slow, like any sudden movement could make things worse. The hallway was just a long shadow, the usual crack in the ceiling, the peeling paint, and then I saw him. He was leaning against the opposite wall, one hand flat on the dirty tiles to keep himself from sliding down. His shirt, once expensive-looking, was soaked and clinging to him, half torn at the shoulder. Wet hair stuck to his forehead. His chest rose and fell too fast, like he'd been running for a long time. There was a dark smear on the wall behind his shoulder that my brain didn't want to name. He lifted his head just enough to look straight into the peephole, like he could feel my eyes on him. For a moment his gaze was so sharp, so awake, it didn't match his broken body at all. There was something in those eyes, control or maybe danger, that made my fingers go cold on the doorknob. "Please," he said, voice low, rough. The word came through the thin door like a secret. "Just somewhere to lie down for a few hours, then I'm gone." My first instinct was no. No, no, no. Women like me don't open doors to men like him at midnight. That's how stories end badly in places like this. I imagined every warning my mother ever gave me, every news headline, every whispered story from the neighbors about people who trusted the wrong knock on the door. But then he coughed, bending over slightly, his hand going to his side. I saw his fingers come away darker, not dirt, not oil. He closed his eyes like he was trying to hold himself together with just his jaw clenched. I could have turned away. I could have pretended I wasn't home, like I did when the landlord came, like I did when my ex shouted drunk things in the hallway months ago. It would have been the smart thing. Instead, a stupid memory rose up. Me at 15, standing outside a locked house in the rain with one small bag, calling my father's number and listening to it ring and ring and ring. Knowing he was inside, knowing he was choosing not to open. My hand moved before my mind caught up. I quietly slipped the chain, turned the lock, and opened the door just a little. We stared at each other through that narrow gap. Up close, the first thing I noticed was not the blood or the torn shirt, but his eyes. Dark, steady, a little surprised that I had actually unlocked the door. He looked younger than I'd thought from the peephole, maybe mid-30s, but his face carried too many old stories. There was a thin scar that cut through his left eyebrow, pale against his skin. "You're hurt," I said, because my brain couldn't think of anything smarter. He gave a faint, almost amused breath. "I'll live, I just need a place where no one will look for me, just for the night." His gaze flicked past my shoulder, taking in the tiny room behind me in a single fast sweep, not greedy, not nervous, just measuring. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong. A stranger, bleeding, asking to disappear. My apartment was one room, barely big enough for me. Letting him in meant letting him into all of it. My bed in the corner, my clothes hanging from a single nail, the little metal box where I kept what was left of my cash. "Look," I whispered back because the hallway suddenly felt full of ears. "I don't know you, I don't." He straightened with effort, wincing as he pulled his hand away from the wall. For a split second his jacket lifted, and that's when I saw it. A black shape tucked at the back of his waistband, half hidden by the wet fabric. Not big, not flashy, just the simple, heavy outline my mind recognized even though I'd never touched one. "A gun." My mouth went dry. He saw where my eyes went and slowly, deliberately raised both hands a little away from his sides. They were bruised and scraped, the knuckles raw, but the gesture was careful, peaceful. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said quietly. There was a strange kind of respect in his voice, like I was someone whose answer mattered. "If you shut this door, I'll walk away if I can." The corner of his mouth twitched like he found his own words darkly funny. But if I stay out here, someone else will find me and they won't knock. A chill crawled up my spine that had nothing to do with the cold in the hallway. Someone else? Who? What kind of life did you have to live for that sentence to sound so simple? I imagined him collapsing on the stairwell. I imagined finding his body in the morning or hearing a different kind of knock, loud, angry, from the kind of men who didn't ask, they took. I imagined doing nothing and knowing I could have. Couch, I heard myself say. My voice didn't sound like mine. You stay on the couch, you try anything, you're out, I mean it. A wave of relief passed through his face so fast he almost hid it. Almost. Deal, he said. I opened the door wider. He stepped inside, bringing the night with him, cold, damp air, the faint smell of smoke, and something metallic I didn't want to name. He moved carefully, like every step cost him, but he still took off his shoes by the door without being asked, placing them neatly to the side. That small act in my messy doorway felt almost polite. The door clicked shut behind him with a soft finality. He glanced around my apartment. It didn't take long, there wasn't much to see. A second-hand couch whose springs complained when you sat down. A tiny stove, 2 mismatched plates, 1 cup drying on a towel. A single framed photo of my mother, young and already tired, watching me blow out candles on a cake we couldn't afford. Nice place, he said, eyes landing on the photo for a second. The words could have been a joke, but they were. He said it like he meant it. I almost laughed. You don't have to be nice to me just because you're bleeding on my floor, I muttered. He looked down. There were indeed a few dark drops on the cracked tiles. Sorry, he said softly, like I'd caught him breaking something important. He winced as he shrugged off his jacket, dropping it over the arm of the couch. The shirt underneath was stuck to his side. When he pulled it up, I saw the problem, a deep, angry groove along his ribs, not a clean bullet hole but too close, like something had torn past him, burning. That's not a fall, I said, my voice thinner than I wanted. No, he agreed simply. He didn't offer a story, I didn't ask for one. My hands moved on their own, reaching for the little plastic first aid box I kept above the sink. Cheap cotton, old antiseptic tape that barely stuck. This was what I had. I brought it to him, fingers trembling, and he started to say he could do it himself, but I was already kneeling in front of the couch. His skin was warm under my cold fingers as I cleaned around the wound. He didn't flinch, didn't curse, just watched me with those unreadable eyes. Up close I could see the other marks on him. A thin white line across his collarbone, a faded burn near his wrist. Small, healed things that added up to a life that had met violence many times. You get into fights often. I tried to sound light, but my voice came out too tight. His lips twitched. Sometimes life doesn't ask if you're ready, he said. You just react. That sounds like something people say when they've done a lot of stupid things, I replied before I could stop myself. To my surprise, he actually smiled just a little. It changed his face, made him look almost gentle. You're not wrong, he said. I taped the cotton in place, my hands finally steadying with the repetition of it. It felt weird, touching a stranger like this, seeing him this vulnerable and knowing absolutely nothing about him. No last name, no job, just a wound, a gun, and the way he watched the door even while pretending to relax. What's your name? I asked. He hesitated, and for a moment something hard flickered in his eyes, like a door slamming shut in a hallway I couldn't see. Then slowly he opened it just a crack. Rafa, he said, you can call me Rafa. I didn't know if it was his real name, but it sat on him well. I'm Sara, I replied. He repeated it once softly, like he was putting it somewhere safe. Sara, thank you for opening the door. Don't thank me yet, I muttered. I might still regret it. He lay back, one arm over his eyes, breath finally slowing. The room felt smaller with him in it, but not in the way I'd expected. Not threatening, just full, heavy with unspoken things. Listen, he said after a moment, his voice dropping even lower. If anyone comes asking tonight, you never saw me, I wasn't here, you were asleep, you didn't hear anything, understand? A tight knot formed in my stomach. What kind of anyone? He was quiet for a beat too long. The kind that doesn't knock, he answered. The kind you don't want to meet. I swallowed, and you brought them to my building. His jaw tightened, but he didn't open his eyes. I didn't choose to bleed in your hallway, he said softly. I chose to knock instead of breaking the door, that's all I can say. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to tell him to get out, to take his trouble and his weapon and his secrets somewhere else. But when I looked at him again, shirt open, bandage crooked, breath deep but uneven, I just saw a man who looked very, very tired. Not drunk, not high, just exhausted, from running, from being whoever he was. "I'll wake up early," I said finally. "You'll be gone before the sun, right?" "Before the sun," he promised. I didn't fully believe him, I didn't fully trust him, but I pulled the old blanket from the cupboard and spread it over him anyway. His fingers brushed mine by accident and he froze, like he wasn't used to someone touching him without fear. "Good night, Sara," he murmured. I left the small lamp on just in case and went to my bed in the corner. I didn't change, just lay on top of the covers, eyes on the ceiling, listening to the new sound in my apartment, the slow, steady breathing of a stranger with a gun. Sleep came in pieces. I woke up twice to distant sirens, once to the building's pipes groaning, once convinced I heard footsteps outside the door. Each time my heart hammered until I checked. He was still there on the couch, one arm falling over the side, fingers just touching the floor. The last time I woke, the room was grey with early light. For a second I forgot, and then everything from the night before rushed back. I sat up fast. The couch was empty. My stomach dropped, the blanket was folded neatly over the armrest, the jacket was gone. For a heartbeat I thought he'd left without a sound and that would be the end of it, a strange, dangerous dream. Then I heard it, a low murmur from the kitchen, a man's voice calm and serious, "My kitchen." I stepped quietly closer. The smell of coffee hit me first, richer and better than anything I could afford. Then I saw him through the narrow doorway. Rafa stood by my tiny window, back to me, the first light of dawn outlining his shoulders. He'd cleaned himself up somehow, hair pushed back, shirt buttoned as if last night hadn't happened. On the chipped counter, my phone lay face up beside something black and heavy I recognized instantly now, his gun no longer hidden. He held my phone to his ear, speaking in that same low voice, but now there was a different weight in it. Authority. It rolled through my little kitchen like smoke. "No," he was saying, "you don't move on that building. Not today, not ever. You understand, the girl in 3B, she's under my protection now." On the other end, even from where I stood, I could hear the answer. A man, nervous, respectful. "Yes, boss, of course, boss." The word echoed in my chest like a dropped stone. "Boss." Rafa turned then, maybe sensing me. Our eyes met across the little room, me in my creased uniform, bare feet on the cold floor, him standing easy next to a gun and my boiling kettle, as if both belonged to him. And in that small, impossible moment, I realized, whatever world he came from, it was big enough to swallow mine whole. His eyes found me before his hand left my phone. For a moment he stayed exactly as he was, one palm around my chipped mug, the other next to the gun, like a photograph that hadn't decided what story it wanted to tell. I stepped fully into the doorway. "Boss," I repeated because my brain needed to hear it out loud. "They just called you boss." Something in his face softened, like he was folding away the version of himself that had been talking on my phone. He ended the call with a short, final, "That's it," put the phone down screen first, and nudged the gun a little further from it, as if not wanting the two to touch. "I was going to make you coffee," he said instead of answering, like we were an old couple and not two strangers who had met in blood and fear 8 hours earlier. "You're the boss of who?" My voice cracked on the last word. "Of what?" He poured the dark coffee into my single mug, then hesitated and reached for the empty glass I used as a toothbrush holder, rinsed it quickly, and poured half in there too. He did it all so calmly it made the panic building in my chest feel ridiculous. "In this part of the city," he said finally, sliding the glass toward me, "when something bad is about to happen, people usually ask if I allowed it." It wasn't an answer, not really. It was worse than an answer. "So you're what, a politician?" The laugh that came out of me was too sharp. "A priest, because those are the only people I know who think they can allow bad things." His mouth twitched. "No, I'm the problem they hire when politicians and priests stop working." There it was, clean, honest almost. I didn't want to sit, but my knees did it without permission. The chair scraped the tile. My hands wrapped around the warm glass like they were looking for proof that any part of my life was still normal. "You said the girl in 3B is under your protection," I said. "That's me, right? Or do you have other girls in 3B? His eyes flicked to mine, quick, apologetic. "Just you." "Under your protection from who?" "From the same people who call you boss." He took a breath and leaned his hips against the counter, crossing his arms carefully so as not to pull at the bandage I'd taped on him. The movement was relaxed, but there was a calculation behind his gaze that made the kitchen feel smaller. "You opened your door last night," he said. "You didn't ask who I was, you didn't take anything from me first. You just helped. That means something where I come from." "I didn't do it for favors," I snapped. The heat surprised me. "I did it because you were bleeding in my hallway, because I know how it feels when no one opens the door, that's it." "I know," he said quietly. "That's why it matters." Silence hung between us. The kettle hissed softly on the stove. Someone in another apartment turned up their TV. The sounds of my old life kept going like nothing had changed, while in my kitchen stood a man who could apparently decide whether entire buildings lived or died. "You dragged me into something," I whispered. "Tell me what." His jaw tensed. For the first time I saw hesitation in him, the weight of choosing how much truth to give a stranger who had seen him almost helpless. He rubbed his thumb over a crack in my counter, eyes on the broken laminate. "Last night," he began slowly, "I was supposed to be in a car with 3 of my men crossing the bridge out of this neighborhood. Simple route, we've done it 100 times. Halfway there, 2 bikes came out of nowhere. Tight formation, very professional, they knew exactly where we'd be." "Cops?" I asked. He shook his head once. "Police don't aim for your head, they aim for your tires. These men wanted the car to flip, they wanted no one walking away." My fingers squeezed the glass so hard I was afraid it would crack. "But you walked away." "Barely," he touched his side lightly. "The driver didn't." His voice didn't break, it didn't need to. The way he looked past me when he said it, like he was seeing twisted metal and blood on asphalt instead of my faded curtains, told me enough. "Someone gave them your route," I said. I'd watched enough cheap crime shows on the old TV to follow that much. He nodded. "Someone who knows my routines, my people." "Your own people tried to kill you." That idea felt even heavier than the word boss. "Why?" "If I knew that," he said, "I wouldn't have ended up in your hallway." He finally looked at me straight. Gone was the sleepy, grateful man from the night before. This was a different Rafa, alert, aware of every shadow in the room, wearing power like a second skin. But under it there was something else too, an exhaustion deeper than any bullet graze. "I got out of the car before it went over," he continued. "Ran through the alleys, lost them. I was not thinking clearly. I know this block. I know which buildings pay protection to me, which pay to others, which belong to nobody. Yours is complicated." That word made my stomach sink. Complicated how? He glanced toward the door like he could see through it to the flow of the street. "There's been talk about cleaning this place out, pushing people out, raising rents, bringing in something shinier. You know how it goes." I did. We'd all heard the rumors. New owners, developers, fancy words that meant the same thing. People like me would be told we didn't belong anymore. "I told my men to stay away from your building while I sorted it," he said. "But last night when I had to disappear, I had 2 choices. Run farther to where they expected me, or vanish somewhere they wouldn't think I'd dare." "You chose here." My voice was flat. "I chose your hallway," he corrected quietly. "And when you opened the door, I realized I'd just put a target on someone who didn't ask for it." The hot knot that had been anger loosened into something colder. Fear, reality. "So now what? They come for you and they find me instead." "They won't touch you." His tone changed, firm, absolute. "That call I made. I just told 10 very dangerous men that if anything happens in this building, anything, it's on their heads. No one extorts here, no one throws gasoline through windows, no one makes you sign papers you don't understand. Not now, not later." "How is that not worse?" I said, almost laughing. "Now if your enemies come, they'll know this building is important to you." He paused, then actually gave a small, rueful smile. "You're smarter than most of the men who work for me, Sara." "That doesn't make me feel better." "It wasn't my plan to make you feel better." He uncrossed his arms, winced slightly, and reached for his jacket on the back of the chair. "It was my plan to make sure you wake up tomorrow." I watched him slide the gun into the back of his waistband with almost casual familiarity. Violence for him was like my coffee machine, a tool you reach for because you know exactly how it works. He noticed my gaze and unexpectedly took the gun out again, setting it on the table between us, muzzle turned away, fingers nowhere near the trigger. "Power," he said slowly, "is like this. Ugly, heavy, complicated. People think if they hold it, they're bigger, stronger." He pushed it gently so it spun once slow on the wood. "But the more you use it, the more it owns you." I swallowed. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you saw me when I was weak," he said simply. That doesn't happen, not to me, not anymore. This, he nodded at the gun, is how everyone else sees me, including the people who just tried to put me in the ground. He picked it up again, slipped it away, and his shoulders straightened, as if the weight in his belt was also a weight back in his posture. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded roll of bills, setting it quietly beside my mug. It was more money than I usually saw in a month. No, I said immediately, heat rushing to my face. I didn't do this for. I know, he cut in gently. It's not payment, it's respect. The landlord won't knock so hard if you're up to date, and you won't have to work 2 shifts with that look on your face. What look? Like you've been fighting alone for a very long time. I hated how much that made my throat tighten. I hated that he could see it so easily. I don't want your money, I tried again, but the words came out softer. I don't want any of this. I just wanted a quiet life. A stupid, small, boring life where my worst problem is an empty fridge. People like me love quiet lives, he said. We just don't get to have them. I stared at the roll of cash between us. My rent, my mother's medicine I still sent money for, the coffee machine at the cafe that kept breaking, all flashed through my mind. Taking it felt like stepping over a line I wouldn't be able to uncross. Not taking it felt like spitting on the universe for handing me one small break. Before I could decide, someone hammered on the front door. Not a soft buzz, not the thin ring from last night, a heavy, angry pounding that shook the frame. Rafa's body changed in a heartbeat, all softness evaporated. His hand went to his back, the gun was in his grip before the second knock. His eyes met mine, sharp, alive. Don't answer, he mouthed. The third blow to the door was harder, and a voice cut through the thin wood, deep and impatient. Open up, 3B police. The word police cut through the cheap wood like a knife. My heart jumped so hard it hurt. Rafa's eyes were already on the door, then on me. In 2 steps he crossed the tiny kitchen. Suddenly he was inches away, so close I could see the faint stubble on his jaw, smell the coffee on his breath. Bathroom window, he whispered, now. I don't. He didn't wait. He moved with a speed that didn't match the bandage on his side, grabbed my elbow and steered me toward the little door beside the stove. Another heavy knock shook the apartment. Open up, Senora, we don't have all day. The voice was harder this time. I heard the impatient jangle of keys, boots shifting in the hallway. Rafa shut the bathroom door behind us, already reaching up to the tiny frosted window above the shower. It was barely wide enough for my shoulders, and he was bigger than me. You're not going to fit, I hissed. I fit in worse, he muttered, unlatching the frame. Cold morning air rushed in, carrying the smell of exhaust and wet concrete. Below, 3 floors down, the narrow alley waited like a bad idea. The next blow to the front door sounded like a kick. Somewhere a baby started crying. A neighbor turned down their TV. Just a second, I shouted, voice too high. I'm getting dressed. You answer, Rafa said, one knee on the toilet, one hand on the windowsill. You're alone, no one was here. You slept through everything. Were they really? Sara, he turned, and for a second his mask slipped. I saw fear there, not for himself, for me. If they're mine, they shoot me on sight. If they're not mine, they still shoot me on sight. Either way, they don't leave you as a witness. Breathe, look them in the eyes, lie like your life depends on it, because it does. He didn't wait for my answer. He pushed the window open with a sharp creak, grabbed the outside ledge and slid his body through like he'd been doing this since he was a kid. For a moment he hung there, half in, half out, muscles tight, face pale from the pull on his wound. Don't let them open this window, he said quietly. No matter what, you didn't see me. Then he was gone, swallowed by the grey light. The banging came again, louder. Last warning, 3B. I ran back to the main room, forced myself to walk the last few steps. My hands were shaking. I wiped them on my uniform, snatched the roll of money from the table and stuffed it under the cushion of the couch without thinking. The second glass with coffee, I grabbed it, dumped it in the sink, watched the dark liquid swirl down like a confession. When I opened the door, 2 men filled the doorway. They wore dark jackets with badges clipped to their belts, guns at their sides. One was thick-necked, buzz-cut, mid-40s maybe, with eyes like dull stones. The other was younger, his hair too perfectly styled for this building, his jaw working like he was chewing gum that wasn't there. The older one lifted his chin at me. Sara Tors. Yes, my voice sounded small, I hated it. He held up something in his hand, A worn leather wallet, open to a metal badge and a laminated card. It looked real enough, but there was a laziness in the way he flashed it, like this part bored him. "Detective Marquez, organized crime," he said. He nodded at the younger man. "This is Officer Luna. We're looking for someone. Mind if we come in?" He didn't wait for my answer. His boot pushed the door wider and they stepped past me into my life. The room shrank around them. Marquez's eyes moved slowly, taking in the couch, the bed in the corner, the single photo on the wall. Luna's gaze was faster, restless, sliding over everything and landing, for a fraction of a second, on the bathroom door. I forced a breath in. What do you want? I have to get to work soon." Marquez ignored that. "Long night in the building," he said, like he was making small talk. "Car crash on the corner, people running through alleys, someone bleeding on your stairs. You sleep through all that, Senora?" "I work late shifts," I said. "When I sleep, I'm dead. I didn't hear anything." The lie tasted bitter. My heartbeat was so loud I was sure they could hear it. He studied my face for a moment, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded paper. When he opened it, my stomach dropped. There he was. The photo was older, cleaner, Rafa in a dark suit, crisp shirt, no blood, no exhaustion. His hair was shorter, his jaw smoother, but the eyes were the same. Calm, sharp, watching. Underneath, black letters. RFAL SALGADO. Suspected extortion, homicide, trafficking. Marquez held the paper up so close I could see the tiny creases where other hands had folded it before. "You seen this man?" I stared at the photo, at the word homicide, at the small, almost invisible scar through his eyebrow that I had cleaned around with trembling fingers. I thought about last night, his hand flat on my dirty wall, blood on my floors, the way he'd said please. I lifted my eyes to the detectives. "No," I said, "never." Luna watched me more openly, his gaze moving between my face and the photo. Something in his expression said he was still deciding what kind of person I was. "Sure," Marquez pressed, voice still casual. "Young woman alone, late at night, a man like this knocks, you'd remember." "I remember my rent notice," I snapped, some anger breaking through the fear. "I remember the coffee machine at work that doesn't stop leaking. I don't remember strange men because I don't open the door to them." That part, at least, used to be true. Marquez's eyes narrowed just a little, like he wasn't used to backtalk from women in buildings like mine. He stepped further in, boots heavy on the tile, and glanced toward the bathroom. My throat tightened. "I already told you I'm alone." He put his hand on the bathroom door handle and pushed it open. The tiny room revealed itself, cracked mirror, damp towel hanging, the shower curtain half off its hooks, the toilet lid still up from Rafa's escape. The small window above the stall looked exactly as old and unimportant as it always had. Except for one thing. A single wet footprint on the tile, near the drain. Luna noticed it first. His eyes flicked down, then up to me. "You said you were sleeping," he said quietly. "You take showers in your dreams." My mind raced. "Pipe burst last night," I lied quickly. "This whole building leaks, you know that, right? Or you only come here when you're chasing ghosts." Marquez stepped into the bathroom, the space too small for a man his size. He was close enough to see the way his breath fogged the mirror. He looked at the footprint, then up at the window, then ran his fingers briefly along the frame. No dust came off. Our hurried hands had wiped it clean. He turned back to me, eyes unreadable. "You live alone, Sara?" "Yes." "No boyfriend, no friend crashing on the couch. Nobody passed by bleeding last night asking for a favor." Each word grazed the truth like a knife sliding over skin. "No," I said again, steady this time. "If I had a man here, everyone in this building would already know. They love to talk." Luna almost smiled at that, almost. Marquez watched me for a long, quiet second. The faucet in some other apartment dripped. A dog barked on the street. My palms were slick. Finally, he stepped out of the bathroom, brushing past me. The smell of cheap aftershave and cigarettes clung to his jacket. "You know who this man is if you see him?" he asked, holding up the photo one more time. I forced myself to give it a casual glance, like it was just another face on the news. "A criminal," I said. "That's what it says, right?" His lips twitched in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Depends who you ask, Senora. Some people say he's the devil, some say he keeps worse devils away. For me, he's just another file, but the men who want him dead, they're not so professional. They set buildings on fire, they shoot first and never ask questions. He let that hang there, a warning disguised as information. Luna reached into his pocket and pulled out a plain white card, writing a number on the back with a pen that looked too nice for his salary. He set it on the edge of my table, right where Rafa's money had been a few minutes before. If he contacts you or if you see anything strange, Luna said, you call this number, day or night, tell them Luna sent you, we'll come fast. I don't want trouble here, I said. It came out more tired than brave. Trouble's already here, Sara, Marquez answered. Question is which side of it you're on. With that they left. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded nothing like their entrance. I stood there for a moment, staring at the wood, listening to their footsteps fade down the hall. My legs suddenly felt too weak to hold me. I slid down until I was sitting on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, the detective's words echoing in my head. Trouble's already here. After a minute there was a faint tap on the bathroom window, once, twice. My heart jumped to my throat again. I forced myself to move, to stand, to cross the room on shaky legs. When I opened the bathroom door, cold air brushed my face. The wet footprint was still there, accusing. I reached up and unlatched the window. 2 hands appeared on the outside sill, fingers white from gripping the brick. A moment later, Rafa's head and shoulders came into view as he pulled himself back in. He landed in the cramped bathroom with a soft grunt, one hand pressed to his side. He was breathing hard, sweat on his forehead, hair damp from fog or fear, I couldn't tell. They gone? He asked. Yeah, my voice shook. They showed me your face. He leaned his head briefly against the cool tiles, eyes closed. And you lied. I don't even know you, I said, the truth of that suddenly heavier than ever. You're wanted for homicide, for extortion. They told me you're the devil, I still lied. He opened his eyes then, really looking at me. Whatever protection he usually wore in his gaze slipped for just a second, and I saw it. Gratitude so raw it almost looked like pain. That, he said quietly, is why you're in more danger than you understand. He stepped out of the bathroom slowly, each movement careful. The adrenaline that had carried him across the ledge was fading, and the wound at his side was reminding him it existed. I followed him into the room, anger starting to rise now that the immediate fear had somewhere to go. Don't talk to me like I'm a child, I snapped, closing the bathroom door. I know danger when it's beating on my walls. I've lived with it my whole life, just a cheaper, more pathetic version. Rafa sank onto the couch, one hand still pressed against his ribs, the other braced on his knee. There's a difference between landlords who threaten and men who make people disappear. Yeah, I walked past him to the window, half expecting to see Marquez and Luna still outside, smoking and watching. But the street was just the same old street. Vendors setting up carts, kids in uniforms heading to school, a woman dragging a shopping cart with a broken wheel. The world kept moving like nothing had changed. Because to us it all ends the same. We lose our homes, we lose our lives, just slower with one, faster with the other. He watched me silent. The morning light caught the side of his face, making the scar on his eyebrow a thin line of white. You shouldn't have lied, he said eventually. I turned, incredulous. You made me lie. I told you to say nothing, to stay out of it. There's a difference. His tone wasn't sharp, but there was iron in it. You could have let them take me. You didn't owe me anything. You bled on my floor, I said. That means something where I come from. He blinked once slowly. You don't even like me, Sara. I don't have to like you to not throw you to wolves, I shot back. I know what it's like to be the one nobody opens the door for, remember? His shoulders sagged a little, some of the fight leaving him. He leaned back, exhaling. You've got more courage than sense. Story of my life. Silence settled between us, not empty this time, but heavy. The card Luna had left sat on the table, the numbers staring up at us like a choice. I walked over, picked it up, turned it between my fingers, then set it down again next to the roll of money under the cushion that I could still feel like a secret. 2 different kinds of protection, both trapping in their own way. Is any of it true? I asked finally. What they wrote under your name, extortion, homicide, trafficking. He didn't flinch, he didn't jump up and shout that he was innocent. He just looked at his hands, turning his right palm up like he was seeing it for the first time. Some of it, he said, not the way they tell it, but some. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one I have. He stared at his palm like he was reading his own past in the lines. When I was 9, my father owed money to men who looked a lot like the ones who were just at your door. Different names, same eyes. They took our refrigerator first. A humorless smile touched his lips. My mother cried more for the food than the metal. Then they took the TV. When there was nothing left to take, they took my father. I sat down slowly on the chair opposite him. His voice had gone distant, like the room was fading and another place was coming into focus. They beat him in the street, he went on calmly. In front of the kids playing soccer, in front of the women hanging laundry. No one stopped them, no one opened their doors. He crawled back to our apartment half-conscious, and he died 3 days later on a mattress that smelled like mold and cheap cigarettes. He looked up at me, his eyes were dry. That made it worse somehow. After the funeral, the same men came back, he said. Different smiles. They told my mother it wouldn't have happened if she had paid faster. They offered to protect us from other men like them, for a fee, of course. My stomach twisted. You were 9, I whispered. Yes, old enough to understand that there is no such thing as away in neighborhoods like ours. There is only who holds the knife. His gaze hardened, but it wasn't aimed at me. I started running errands for another crew, men who hated the first ones. I learned faces, corners, who owed who. I learned that sometimes the only way to keep your mother safe is to be the storm that everyone else is afraid of. Did it work? I asked. Was she safe? For a while, his jaw tightened. Then the safe men started acting like the ones before. Power is hungry. It always wants more. By then I was too deep. I was good at what I did. Too good. People started calling me for solutions. I became what I am. A boss, I said quietly. A man with more blood on his hands than any woman should have to be near, he corrected. I told myself it was different, that I only hurt those who hurt others, that my streets were safer, my buildings protected, that the kids in my blocks could play soccer at night without someone shooting in the dark. He gave a small, tired laugh. Funny how easy it is to lie to yourself when everyone else is afraid to tell you the truth. My fingers tightened around the edge of the table. He was right. These blocks were not safe but less wild than others. There were rumors that certain corners belonged to Rafa and were off-limits to smaller gangs. Everyone knew some places were worse. You think the people here like paying you? I asked. You think they feel protected or just trapped? He took the question like a punch he'd known was coming. Both, he said. Some hate me, some thank me. Most just live with me the way you live with the rain. They curse when it floods and bless it when it fills their buckets. That's not good enough. I know. He said it so simply it caught me off guard. No defense, no excuse. You asked me if they were telling the truth, he continued. I've taken money from people who had no other choice. I've ordered things done to men who did worse to others. I've sent boys younger than me into fights they weren't ready for. And yes, people have died because I gave a nod instead of a no. Then why should I protect you? I whispered. Why should I have lied? Because the ones who want my seat don't want to protect anyone, he said. They want to sell your building, burn it, use it, empty it, whatever brings more money, more fear. They don't care if a girl in 3B gets crushed in the middle. To them, you're nobody. To me, he stopped himself, looking almost embarrassed. You opened the door when I was nobody too. We sat there, two nobodies tangled in a web of somebodies. So what now? I asked. You hide here forever. That detective said your enemies burn buildings, that if they want you dead, people like me become collateral. He rubbed his temple, frustration showing in the tightness of his hand. I can't stay. The longer I'm here, the more heat I bring. I need to find out who gave my root, who's trying to take my place. Until I do, every person who knows where I am is at risk. You're saying I'm at risk because I met you, and I'm more at risk if you leave, and I'm also more at risk if you stay. I gave a small, incredulous laugh. Great. Sometimes life doesn't give you clean options, he said, echoing his own words from the night before. I noticed. He leaned forward, wincing slightly, and reached into his pocket again. This time he pulled out a small black phone, the cheap kind you buy with cash and throw away. He set it on the table between us. This number only a few people have, he said. Less after last night. If anyone comes here asking about me, police, men with suits, men with tattoos you don't recognize, you don't argue, you don't be brave. You leave, you go to the cafe, to your mother, I don't care, and when you're far you call me once. If I don't answer, you throw this in the river. I stared at the phone. You trust me with that. When we met, you wouldn't even give me your real name. He paused. You still don't know if that's my real name. Is it? A ghost of a smile passed over his lips. Now you really want me to incriminate myself. I rolled my eyes despite everything. You're impossible. And you, he said softly, are kind in a place that uses kindness like currency. That's more dangerous than any gun. A noise outside made us both stiffen, just a car backfiring, a vendor shouting, but our bodies had already learned to expect bullets behind every sound. Rafa stood slowly this time, like the weight of what he carried was finally catching up with him. He slipped the gun into his waistband again, pulled his jacket tighter around his side. I'll move you, he said suddenly. A different building, somewhere under another name, you disappear from here before anything explodes. No, the word left my mouth before I could stop it. He frowned, no. This is my home, I said, ugly as it is. I'm not running just because some men with guns drew a circle around it on a map. We've been pushed around enough. Staying here makes you a target. Breathing makes me a target, I replied. At least here I know where the cracks in the stairs are. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. You're stubborn, he said. You're used to everyone saying yes, I answered. We stood there, facing each other across my peeling floor, two worlds pressed into one small room. He broke the stare first, looking at the photo on my wall, the one of my mother with the tired smile. She'd hate me, he said. She hates anyone who makes her worry about me, I replied. That includes my landlord, my ex, and now apparently you. He nodded once, accepting it. I'll fix this, he said quietly. Whatever is happening with the building, with the men trying to take my place, I'll fix it. Not for me, for you, for the kids upstairs, for the old man in 2A who smokes too much. I won't let them clean this place with fire. You talk like a hero in a bad movie, I said, but my voice was softer than my words. I'm not a hero, he said. Heroes don't do the things I've done, but sometimes bad men stand in the way of worse men, and sometimes a girl in 3B reminds them they still remember how to knock. He moved toward the door. My chest tightened with a fear I didn't fully understand. You're just going to walk out, I asked, after all this? If I stay, I drag you deeper, he said. If I go, at least there's a chance this ends with you still making bad coffee and cursing at broken machines. Something in me rebelled at the idea of him disappearing back into the shadows he came from. Rafa, I said. He turned his head slightly, hand on the doorknob. You come back alive, I told him. If I'm risking my stupid life lying to police and hiding burner phones, you don't get to die and make it pointless. A real smile touched his mouth then, small but there. Bossy, he murmured. I learned from the best, apparently. He opened the door just a crack, checking the hallway like a man who had survived too many ambushes. Then he stepped out. The door clicked shut behind him. The apartment felt emptier than it had any right to. I picked up the little black phone, feeling its weight. Beside it, Luna's white card stared at me like an accusation. 2 numbers, 2 roads, both leading into darkness. Hours later, as the light outside shifted toward evening, and the building settled into its usual tired noises, the phone in my hand suddenly lit up. No name, no number, just one word on the screen, unknown. My thumb hovered over the green button. On the other side of that ring, I knew, waited a voice that could either save my tiny world, or drag it finally completely into his.